Hello, my AP Psych students. Today we are talking about, you want some of this? Huh? Is that what it is? You want this? I'll give you more than you can handle. You get the whole thing. Sorry, I always wanted to introduce a lecture that way. So we are talking about aggression. That was an example, perhaps. But let's start with a definition of aggression. So we've got a definition of aggression: any physical or verbal behavior that is intended to cause harm to another person. Okay, the key here is that you are intending to cause harm. So, a couple of examples of things that are not aggression. I don't know about you, if you've ever been on the phone with a telemarketer or had a salesperson come to your house and they simply will not let you alone. They're pushy and they're just trying to convince you to buy their product or sign up for this or that. That's not aggression. They're not trying to give you, even though it can be emotionally painful to go through that. They're not trying to give you, not trying to harm you in any particular way. And a dentist who makes you wince while drilling a tooth or something like that. Obviously, the dentist is not intending to cause you harm. Hopefully, he's numbed up your mouth, or she has numbed up your mouth such that you don't feel the pain. Sometimes it doesn't always work, and you feel pain. Those are not examples. Examples that you probably are familiar with. Someone who spreads a rumor about somebody through hurtful gossip. Bully, obviously, someone who torments somebody else in person or even online nowadays. Or somebody who mugs you while you're walking down the street. Those are all examples of aggression. Okay, so generally there are three explanations for why we act aggressively. The first one is biological, second one is psychological, and then the third one is sociocultural. Okay, so we're going to dive into all three of those. First of all, the biological basis for aggression. Genes seem to play a big role in this. In other words, there are people and animals that they found that are, in a sense, bred for aggression. Now, sometimes people specifically breed animals for aggression, depending on the purposes they want to serve. Sometimes it's for illegitimate means like fighting or whatnot among animals, or sometimes it's for experimental means. But people also seem to have aggression that runs in genes. If you grew up in a family with a lot of aggression, you are much more likely to be that way as well. So that's genetic influences. You have neural influences. Okay, there's not one specific spot of the brain that is the end-all be-all of aggressive behavior. Okay, it's kind of all parts are working together to do this. But there are two in particular that seem to lead to greater aggression. The amygdala, of course, we know that a lot of emotions, fear, and things like that come out of the amygdala. And so a damaged amygdala can certainly cause aggressive behavior. And then, of course, if something is wrong with our frontal lobe, if it's damaged or if it's not mature yet, which is why younger people are more prone to aggressive acts than older people. As your frontal lobe matures and things like that, you are less aggressive. And so the amygdala and frontal lobes in particular can lead to aggressive behavior if they're not functioning appropriately. And then biochemically, one of the clearest signs of aggression or leading indicators of aggression is testosterone. Okay, so there is a clear distinction here between men and women and aggressive behavior. You take a gentle animal and inject it with testosterone, it will almost immediately become more aggressive in its behavior, mannerisms, and things like that. The same is true of men and women. Okay, as testosterone grows, particularly among men at a certain point in their life, they're going to be more aggressive. And again, as time goes on, as men get older, that testosterone level wanes, which is why 70-year-olds typically aren't quite as aggressive as 20-year-olds. Okay, so testosterone is a big indicator of that. You've also got alcohol use. Okay, now there are some, obviously, one part of alcohol use has to do with the fact that it inhibits the frontal lobe, which the frontal lobe, of course, controls our behavior, which if that's not in control, it's going to lead to aggression. But just in general, studies have shown that 57% of homicides, and it's actually higher in some other countries, but in America, 50% of homicides that are committed have alcohol as a contributing factor. In fact, they've even done studies, people that think they're consuming alcohol, even though they're not actually consuming alcohol, they're given something non-alcoholic. But if you think you're consuming alcohol, it often leads to more aggressive behavior. but also people that were slipped alcohol unbeknownst to them will register with more aggressive behavior. So it actually works both biologically and psychologically, the effects of alcohol. And so not surprisingly, the people that have been drinking are more likely to lead to aggressive behavior. All right. The second cause, we talked about the psychological basis for aggression. So two things we're going to look at here. Aversive events. This shouldn't be surprising to us. When we're frustrated, we tend to be a little bit meaner. Okay, sometimes they say misery loves company, right? So when things are going bad for us, we, our trigger can be flipped pretty quickly, right? So negative stimuli, hot temperatures, which we're talking about in a second. When we are enduring pain, you ever been going through chronic pain? Something's been bothering you for a long time. It's easier to get frustrated, and it's easier for that to lead to aggression. If someone has been personally insulting you, bad odors even, as you can imagine, crowding, if you're just being kind of pushed in and there's just a lot going on. All these things can lead to frustration, and frustration can lead to aggression, okay? Of course, the classic, I'm sure you've heard this before, I found this fascinating, is I typed in the word hangry into Microsoft Word. It did not indicate that it was a misspelled word or not a word. I think now it recognizes that that's a thing. Okay, being hangry, of course, we talk about when you're hungry, you get frustrated. Sometimes when you're tired, I'm sure you've known people that are irritable when they're tired, right? They're lacking sleep, and so they can easily become aggressive when they're irritable. But interesting, hotter temperatures in particular, studies across cultures and across time have both indicated that the hotter the temperature, the more likely people are to act in violence. Okay, so there are more violent acts in the summer, for example, or during heat waves or during things like that. And so we don't like being hot. Okay, being cool literally cools us out. Okay, and so when things are hotter, we are more tend more toward aggression. Freud had a particular thought on this, and sometimes called aggression as catharsis. And the idea is that we have this natural instinct to be aggressive. If we can find an appropriate means of letting it out, then that would decrease aggression in real life, and so, or in our normal day-to-day life. And so again, there's debate on this. Okay, it's not a universally accepted one way or the other, but his idea was if we can find those healthy outlets. Okay, someone who, for example, plays football, or somebody who does MMA fighting or something along those lines, they can actually reduce the unhealthy kind of aggression, which is aggression in situations that aren't warranted or are harmful to others in the wrong situation and that kind of thing. And so sometimes you hear that aggression as catharsis. If we can find those healthy means, then we're less likely to be aggressive. We get it out of our system, in a sense, is kind of the way of looking at that. All right, so that's the psychological basis, two ideas to know there. And then lastly, the sociocultural basis for aggression. Reinforcement and modeling, we've talked about this before in a previous unit. One, when aggressive behavior is reinforced, in other words, if you are rewarded for being aggressive, of course you're more likely to be aggressive again in the future. And then of course modeling, we learn by watching others. And so again, more and more psychologists are encouraging the type of parenting where if you are yelling and hitting as a parent to discourage your child from yell and hit, you might not be doing what you aim to do. It's better to model appropriate behavior, rational behavior, controlled behavior, and you're more likely to see it in the people around you. So reinforcement modeling socially will affect that as well. And then lastly, a little bit controversial, but media models for violence. Okay, the idea here is that watching television, watching movies, or playing video games that are violent can lead to an increase of violent behavior. And again, I make a note here, it's not universally accepted. There are some naysayers regarding this theory, but there have been a lot of studies that have shown that when people play violent video games or watch violent movies or TV, it does increase aggressive thoughts, decrease empathy, and increase aggression. And so essentially, like it's saying up here, is that when we see people in difficult situations, say it's an action movie, and it could be just a fun action movie or whatever, but someone encounters a difficult situation and they act with aggression. It's sending a message to us that when we are faced with similar real-life difficult situations, acting with aggression is the key to it. We got to be like a man, or something like that, and act accordingly. And so we do see a slight change in attitude. And again, there are a lot of factors that cause aggressive behavior. There's not any one single one that you can point to and say, this is exactly what it is, and that if we just change that, life would be good. It's a lot of things at play here, but this is a factor. I think about it this way. Think of how much money companies spend during the Super Bowl for a 30-second ad. How many millions of dollars they spend in 30 seconds because they know that in 30 seconds they can somehow influence your behavior. They know that. Studies have shown them that. So again, if you're watching things in media or on the internet or, like I say, playing video games over and over and over again, the idea that it is not in any way influencing your behavior, I think, is a little bit naive. And again, I'm not saying everyone's going to go out and become a murderer or a violent person or whatever else, but it does have an effect on our attitudes, how we view aggression, how we view violence, and things like that. Okay, so again, the three bases there. You've got the biological model, you've got the psychological model, and the sociocultural model. So three explanations as to why some people may act aggressively or more aggressively than others. And so there you go. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. And like I said, I know we're not going to be back for a while now. So just keep up with the updates and the emails and things like that. But I miss you guys, and again, hope to see you sooner than later.